Now, the big issue as we approach the low point of the summer doldrums, usually associated with August 15th, is the question of Allen, the ISIS czar in the State Department, an appointee of Skull and Bones Kerry, brought in to engineer a situation where the U.S. would have no choice but to attack Assad. And that is a very dangerous game, which we reject. We say the alternative in Syria is Assad or chaos. And that makes Assad far and away the superior choice. So people that are trying to repeat the Libyan operation of chaos, delirium, and the end of civilization, they're trying to bring that to Syria. And remember, Damascus is probably the oldest inhabited place in the world. That's going some. It's also the birthplace of Christianity. St. Paul on the Damascus Road. That's where an organized church, in the sense that we've seen it, originated. So all sorts of reasons to be on the side of Assad. It's also the last pluralistic, ethnically pluralistic, religiously pluralistic, secular government with class-based Nasserist principles. Much to recommend it. Far better than the butchers of ISIS. And we're finding out now about the rape culture of ISIS. Why don't we get a mobilization of feminists on that? And I'm afraid that when you get something that horrendous, there are no limits. So it's got to be shut down. We're looking at Allen, as you know, the Tax Wall Street Party, the United Front Against Austerity, the morning briefing that you can see on Tarpley.net, and I myself personally are engaged in a campaign to get Allen out. We want to educate publics. We want to educate opinion leaders around the world in this question of Allen. Why Allen must be fired. Hashtag FireAllen4ISIS, and do it now. We can easily spin out a scenario that gets you to World War III very, very quickly. We have been, we've enjoyed the cooperation in this of an eminent website, that is the Voltaire Network of Thierry Meyssan. We had him on 2 weeks ago. Let's see what we can do this week and in the coming weeks to make sure that people in this country are aware of that source and join in to this anti-Allen campaign. Now, the big news of this past week is that we have had the first sign of institutional resistance in the United States against the machinations of the Allen Petraeus seditious, insubordinate clique. People who are trying to impose policies that the American people don't want, and even that Obama doesn't want. The White House doesn't want it. And Allen is doing it all the same. Why isn't he fired? Certainly, you fire Allen at this point, you're going to torpedo the Iran nuclear accord. That is one of the things Allen wants. He's essentially saying, come on, hit me. Because if you hit him, then he can then, if he's fired and out of the government, he can then go ahead and say, well, now I'll tell you all about the terrible Iranians. So this would be a terrible disadvantage for the month of September, when it's going to be important to get this Iran nuclear accord approved, right? In the face of the neocons and in the face of little Rand Paul, who has unmasked as a warmonger on this issue, as everybody can see, right? Chasing that reactionary Republican base. So we want Allen out. Actually, the slogan could also be indict Allen. Fire him first and then indict him. But even that wouldn't stop him from talking. But the idea would be make him an offer he can't refuse, shut him down, prevent him from doing the two things he wants. He wants to torpedo the Iran nuclear deal, and he wants to get the U.S. involved in the war in Syria. So now, the institutional pushback and resistance, where does it come from? This is a very important article. I recommend it. I've plastered this all over my website, all over my Twitter. You've got to be aware of this. It comes from Fox News. Now, nervous Nellies, don't worry. You're not going to be tainted by contact with Fox News on this one. This is simply the vehicle that a group of people in the Pentagon have chosen to leak out how horrified they are about what Allen is doing and hopefully stimulate some counterpunch against this Allen Petraeus clique. So we're talking Fox News. We're talking the 10th of August, and we're recording here on the afternoon of the 14th. So earlier this week, the article written by their correspondent Jennifer Griffin, national security correspondent for Fox News. And the idea of this is it goes back and reconstructs the horrible situation that emerged on the 24th of July. Remember, Obama has left Washington. He's flying to Kenya, and Allen gets together with Erdogan and says, okay, the boss is out of town. Let's have a coup. Let's have a mini putsch in the policy realm. Let's do an end run around the president. Sedition, treason. So Allen does it anyway. And how does it happen? The dramatic scene is we're at something called the Combined Air and Space Operations Center. And here, as we're told on that fateful day, quote, a Turkish officer came into the Combined Air and Space Operations Center and announced that the strike would begin in 10 minutes. The strike means that Turkey is going to bomb not ISIS, as they had promised, but the Kurds. In other words, the main force that the U.S. is relying on, and indeed the front line of civilization in general. The Kurds are the front line of human civilization against the ISIS butchers, rapists, mass killers, genocidalists, lunatics, and all the rest. So the Turkish officer comes into the Combined Air and Space Operations Center in a secret location. I mean, they know where it is, but for us, it's secret. The strike will begin in 10 minutes. So he says, all Allied jets, U.S., British, French, doesn't matter. Go to the south of Mosul immediately or you could be in big trouble. And the officer telling this story, a military source with knowledge of the Turkish attack, says, quote, we were outraged. And America, you better be outraged too. This is horrendous. This is out of the question. So they're telling the U.S. Naval and Air Force pilots to skedaddle, and it's not only them. Even more serious, perhaps. The U.S. Special Forces are training the Kurds, doing something good for a change, right? Gold is where you find it. Don't close your mind. Remember, this is the front line against civilization. So if the U.S. can help the Kurds, great, do it. So at the time that these bombs begin to fall, right, the Turks are starting to bomb the PKK Kurds. At least officially, the U.S. doesn't have anybody there. But the YPG Kurds in Syria, the U.S. has large commitments of advisors, helpers, and it should be more. These are the people you want to help militarily, arm them, right, because they're fighting your battle. So the quote here is, we had no idea who the Turkish fighters were, airplanes now, their call signs, what frequencies they were using, their altitude, or what they were squawking to identify the jets on radar. Now, the thesis of the article is that we're headed towards a wider war, thanks to Allen. So, FireAllen4ISIS, and we'll be back in a minute. World Crisis Radio, it's the afternoon of August 14th, and you're going to hear this on August 15th, so migliori auguri per il Ferragosto, right? This holiday goes back to the Emperor Augustus Caesar, so it's a long-standing holiday. Great day to relax and get busy on social media attacking Allen. You can do that in your chaise longue, right, on your deck chair. You can put out the stuff to make sure that Allen gets fired. So the question is, when the Turkish bombing starts, the U.S. aviation gets 10-minute warning, and the other allies, right, who are they? Are lots of people, right? Jordan, other countries, Iraq, right? All of them are told, get out of the way. The Turkish Air Force is coming with US F-16s. How about that? And there's a danger that the U.S. Special Forces, who are training the Kurds to fight ISIS, to fight them more effectively, to defend civilization in the first rank, they are almost getting killed by the Turkish bombs. Turkish treachery has gone too far. The insanity of Erdogan and Davutoglu, this has gone too far. Enough already. Obama had threatened on the 22nd of July, we believe, to kick Erdogan out of NATO if he didn't stop supporting ISIS. And again, it's more than supporting. He's the head of ISIS. He's the caliph. He's the military commander of ISIS. He wants to move them east, it's true. He wants to knock off northern Iraq as much as it needs to be knocked off. But above all then, Iran and the Caucasus, Transcaucasus, or other areas, right? This is supposed to be Tamer Lane, the great, or the not so great in this case, and they're supposed to do the job. Now, the dangers. As soon as the U.S. starts essentially getting perceived within Turkey as supporting a bombing campaign of the PKK, you got some pretty violent Marxist-Leninists in Turkey, in the cities, and lo and behold, they start attacking U.S. Diplomatic facilities, right? That happened on Monday of this week. The second step, though, and I think this is one of the things that it's implicit in this article, but we can be much more explicit. If Turkey succeeds in weakening the Kurds, in particular, if Turkey succeeds in weakening the YPG Kurds, those gallant, courageous fighters who destroyed ISIS in the city of Kobane, right, who broke the myth of ISIS invincibility, which the Anglo-American media had so assiduously cultivated, right? They showed that ISIS was not 10 feet tall, that you could crush them, defeat them, humiliate them, drive them out, smash them. Those Kurds are now getting bombed. Now, if the Kurds get bombed, YPG, PKK, then who's going to fight ISIS? Well, Turkey won't. And that will be the end of it. Quite possibly the Iraqis can't. Remember, the problem with Iraq is that the Iraqi officers are bribed by Saudi Arabia and assorted characters, right, who want ISIS to grow. And, of course, this is done under CIA auspices, too, right? There's a split in the U.S. government on this, right? Allen and his neocons and Petraeus are on one side. But now, if the U.S. allows Turkey to crush the Kurds, there'll be nobody to fight ISIS. ISIS at that point will begin once again to expand. They will go to Beirut. They will go to Baghdad. They will go beyond that. And then we're going to hear the fascist Republican Brigade demanding, as we heard in their lunatic debate, U.S. boots on the ground, U.S. ground divisions. And once you get the U.S. ground divisions in there, they will require air support, and then you're on your way to a war with Assad. And there is no reason it can be avoided. This is the tremendous catastrophe which is now looming as a result of Allen's machinations. Again, it's a simple chain. It's a simple chain of cause and effect. Turkey smashes the Kurds with air attacks. Okay, the Kurds are weakened. The only enemy of ISIS is weakened. ISIS will grow. ISIS grows. The hysteria is unleashed when they capture various capitals, again, from Beirut to Amman to Baghdad and so forth. And at that point, the pressure for U.S. ground forces will become overwhelming. And this is what Allen wants. This is the goal. This is not an unwanted byproduct. It's not a spin-off. This is the very main of his intent. So this has to end. And once you get the U.S. at war with Assad, with ground divisions in Syria, you are well on your way to a general war, and you are well on your way to World War III. And this cannot be allowed. This must be nipped in the bud. Right? Stop it when it's still not yet completely unfolded. So it's clear this Allen-Erdogan safe haven for terrorist malarkey of the that weekend of the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th of July. This opens the gates of hell, right? Just at the time in the Chinese calendar, of course, Yen Lo Wang, the Lord of the Inferno, lets out all the hungry ghosts. Well, this time Yen Lo Wang appears in the guise of General Allen and his friend Erdogan, right? In some ways, the stupidest of all heads of state that we've seen lately. So, by striking the Kurds, we read in this article, NATO ally Turkey may have opened a new front in the situation there, and this is a war that could blow back on the U.S. and Turkey. 2 women opened fire on the heavily guarded U.S. consulate in one of the Turkish cities. And in retrospect, also here, a senior defense official tells Fox News that another reason the Kurds want to keep the 68-mile border open is to prevent the Kurds from selling their oil on the Mediterranean. In other words, there's a Kurdish corridor all along the southern border of Turkey, all the way over to Syria and the Syrian Mediterranean ports, except for the 68-mile gap. And this is exactly what we put out in our map that we put out in the morning briefing on the 27th of July, right, that Monday. So the quote here is, the safe zone was Turkey's way of preventing the Kurds from completely taking over the border, right? They don't want, and we've stressed this, right, they don't want the Kurds taking over the border. So Turkey doesn't want to eliminate ISIS, right? Turkey does not want to eliminate ISIS. Well, we do. They want to prevent the Kurds from taking over the border. They need U.S. help to do this. Now, it is important. U.S. officials have rejected Turkish requests to set up a safe zone of any sort in the north of Syria. And indeed, we should hold on to the fact that the Obama White House on 27th of July repudiated this idea. They said, no, this is not the U.S. policy. But that doesn't stop Allen and his seditious crew. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, August 14th, 2015 here in Washington, and the bureaucratic warfare, the intrigue, the putsch, mini putsch, coup, mini coup, cold coup, creeping coup. The top creep is Allen. Fire Allen. Get rid of the ISIS Czar. Don't let him start World War III, and I've just shown you how that scenario could work. Don't let him weaken the Kurds to the point where the only forces available, in their sense, to fight ISIS become the Marines, right? So he's threatening the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and the Marines. It's too much. This guy has to go. Obama should carry out with an ultimatum. Repeat that ultimatum in public. Erdogan, stop your full support of ISIS or out of NATO. And at that point, the Turkish army, I think, would come forward and take care of Erdogan one way or another and put a stop to this monstrous policy that he has inaugurated, right? Complete lies, deception, and everything else. It's also worth noting, Tom Kiley made this point the other night. I think it's very germane. If you've got Obama saying to Erdogan, look, stop supporting ISIS or we'll kick you out of NATO, 22nd of July. And then more recently, 2 weeks ago, Putin saying to the Turkish ambassador, stop supporting ISIS or you can go to hell with your president. He can go to hell with his ISIS terrorists. We'll have a nice big Stalingrad for them in northern Syria. Erdogan is sufficiently isolated. The only thing holding Erdogan up is actually Allen. So you can do all of this very neatly. You don't have to do any of the big bloody stuff, right? The wet work. None of that is needed. You simply say, Allen, you're fired. And let him say what he wants. Now, I can see that Obama is not going to do that until the Iran deal goes through, because that's the substance of the extortion practiced by Allen. But I think he could also be convinced to go quietly. In other words, to cease his activities and shut up about it. Right? Maybe his pension might be in jeopardy. Right? Certainly, if he's convicted of abuse of office. Now, just in terms of that ultimatum by Putin to the Turkish government, some people were skeptical about this. Let me just show you. I think the atmosphere in Russian diplomatic circles is, what can we say, heated enough for that thing to be perfectly plausible. And now what we know is that on the 12th of August, we have Sergei Lavrov, consummate diplomat, very intelligent man. We've been, glad to see him in action for many years now. He started swearing during a news conference. So he's trying to bring the Saudis to a point of reason. And we pointed out that there may even be realists in Saudi Arabia, although this is a controversial thesis. This is now Adel Al-Jubeir. We know him here in Washington. He was here for quite a while. So 40 minutes into the joint press conference, while Lavrov's speech is being translated into Arabic, the Russian foreign minister can be heard quietly but distinctively muttering, expletive imbeciles. Expletive imbeciles. They can't tell us, the Moscow Times cannot tell us the word because of laws against obscenity over in Russia. Some people say no. The spokeswoman for the foreign ministry, Maria Zakharova, says no. He didn't really say it. All right, fine. They're not gonna confirm. Yes, he said it, and that's the same thing with the ultimatum to Turkey. Right? They're not going to confirm it. That's the whole point. These are things that are delivered, but then they're denied. But they're denied with non-denial denials. Okay, so I believe that the ultimatum from Putin to Turkey is and was real. But now we have also these people inside the U.S. Now there's also some bad feeling in the U.S. Editorial world. I know the Washington Post is not so happy with what the Turks are doing, and that's all of these things do add up, right? Turkey's parallel war, another offensive threatens the fight against the Islamic State. Washington Post, Friday, August 7th, a year ago, and this is the Washington Post, they say the best response is to urge Erdogan to quickly end the offensive against the PKK and seek a new ceasefire. Davutoglu had written a raving op-ed, I think we quoted part of it the previous week, that a long-standing peace process was not dead, although Erdogan said it was dead, so now they should resume it. But of course the problem here in the Washington Post, there's no reference to the mini coup carried out by Allen, right? There's no reflection of this intrigue. So remember, the White House denied it. And if you want to read about this here, let me also point out, Voltaire Network does yeoman service. Voltaire Network does a very good job. They put Allen's mug on their front page, and it's called Syria, the Rhetoric and the Truth by Thierry Meyssan, from Beirut, Lebanon now, August 13th, 2015. And the idea here is we've got to watch out what Allen is doing. We got to go back to these vetoes, right? In other words, those vetoes by Russia and China, October 2011, February 2012, July 2012, 3 vetoes. You cannot bomb Assad. So these are three vetoes from 2 powers. The question then is also geopolitics, right? Russia wants to have a presence in the Mediterranean. They want to have the naval base of Tartus. I've seen it. I've been there, not inside, but at least outside, and you can see it. Turkey, Erdogan, has been scheming for years to get the U.S. embroiled. May 2013, Turkey says there was a massive terror attack in Reyhani, and they say the Syrians did it. And remember, the Ghouta chemical weapons fraud of the 21st of August, 2013, right? The British MI6 unmasked it, warned the U.S., according to Mason. And there was a cleverly orchestrated debate in the House of Commons. London and Washington left Ankara and Paris to their crimes and their bluster. Okay? So does the Obama administration have a strategy to work with Iran and remodel the region, right? In what sense? But you can certainly see that Obama is not the worst game in town. And the stupid libertarians, I guess some of them are, the stupid people who spend their time attacking Obama, that is counterproductive at this point. Attack Allen. Get rid of Allen. In other words, get rid of the people around Obama that are worse than Obama, who are working hard to make Obama worse than he would normally be in this apparatus. Once you're done with them, if you want to, you can then go after Obama. That's fine. If you can show that Obama is actually the worst center of initiative, in other words, that the Obama policy is the worst. Right now, I say, go after Allen. FireAllen4ISIS. That's the watchword for the rest of this month. And remember, Obama's out of town. The U.S. government is out of town, right? The Congress, the House, and the Senate are out of town on the long recess, right? They're cavorting at the Iowa State Fair. Obama's on Martha's Vineyard. Supreme Court not here. There's a void. Nature abhors a void. And the schemer Allen wants to move into that void. Chaos. And that makes Assad far and away the superior choice. So people that are trying to repeat the Libyan operation of chaos, delirium, and the end of civilization, they're trying to bring that to Syria. And remember, Damascus is probably the oldest inhabited place in the world. That's going some. It's also the birthplace of Christianity. St. Paul on the Damascus Road. That's where an organized church, in the sense that we've seen. Now, the big issue as we approach the low point of the summer doldrums, usually associated with August 15th, is the question of Allen, the ISIS czar in the State Department, an appointee of Skull and Bones Kerry, brought in to engineer a situation where the U.S. would have no choice but to attack Assad. And that is a very dangerous game, which we reject. We say the alternative in Syria is Assad, or we're looking at Allen, as you know, the Tax Wall Street Party, the United Front Against Austerity, the morning briefing that you can see on Tarpley.net, and I myself personally are engaged in a campaign to get Allen out. We want to educate publics. We want to educate opinion leaders around the world in this question of Allen. Why Allen must be fired. Hashtag FireAllen4ISIS, and do it now. We can easily spin out a scenario that gets you to World War III very, very quickly. We have been, we've enjoyed the originated, so all sorts of reasons to be on the side of Assad. It's also the last pluralistic, ethnically pluralistic, religiously pluralistic, secular government with class-based Nasserist principles. Much to recommend it. Far better than the butchers of ISIS. And we're finding out now about the rape culture of ISIS. Why don't we get a mobilization of feminists on that? And I'm afraid that when you get something that horrendous, there are no limits. So it's got to be shut down. Cooperation in this of an eminent website, that is the Voltaire Network of Thierry Meyssan. We had him on 2 weeks ago. Let's see what we can do this week and in the coming weeks to make sure that people in this country are aware of that source and join in to this anti-Allen campaign. Now, the big news of this past week is that we have had the first sign of institutional resistance in the United States.